All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Running with Wolves. I actually am so excited for today's episode because we are going to do a true or false episode, and I'm going to give you all of my very Savannah opinions about marketing and sales. I'm going to give you the down and dirty. I'm going to give you the truth in love. You know, I always will. But I'm definitely going to give you my thoughts about a lot of this. I've been getting so many questions from you guys. We've been doing an Ask Me Anything every Tuesday. And you guys have been submitting a bunch of marketing and sales questions that I've actually really kind of been loving, because it's enabled me to really see what you guys have questions around. And so some of those I just kind of wanted to expand on today. So I'm super excited that we're going to go into this. Also, side note, my dogs are so freaking tired right now. I'm literally looking at them zonked out. I started to take them to this doggy daycare place that's right near my house, and they've absolutely been obsessed with it, which I was so nervous about, because Honey, my younger puppy, is super, super anxious and nervous, but it's been a really great little socializing experiment for her. And so I'm super excited. So I'm really hoping that they stay asleep the entire time that I'm recording this, because I also record stuff in my house. I don't know if you guys knew this, but yeah, it's been a little crazy. So fingers crossed that they stay asleep. So we are going to get into it. All right. So the first topic that I want to talk about is marketing true or false misconceptions. The first one is something that I actually see so many of, not only our clients struggling with, but just people who come to us in general and talk about the fact that they don't have time to create content, which is batching content is more efficient than creating content day of. So this is a really interesting take that a lot of people have. And I think it's something that has kind of been forced on us as business owners. And excuse me. And I'm honestly a very firm believer that if you are a business owner, you did that to be able to do things your way. You started a business to be able to run things your way. And so that includes marketing and sales, right? That includes how you go about creating content. That includes so many different things. So my very firm belief is that you have to find what is right for you. But there, I think, is a little bit of information that you have to know in order to really figure out what is right for you, right? Because on the flip side of that, yes, you get this autonomy and this freedom to figure out what works for you. But what I also think is super concerning is that a lot of people will say oh, well, batching doesn't work for me, or, oh, well, filming day of doesn't work for me, so I'm just not going to create content. Or, that doesn't work for me. So, I'll find a time where I can batch, or I forgot to batch on Friday, so I'll just do it next week and just won't have content going out, which then means that you are essentially ghosting your audience because you don't have the ability to get your content out. And so you could have literally the best possible strategy in the entire world. But if you can't get that content out, the message isn't going to get to your audience, which ultimately means it's not going to convert, right? So what's the freaking point? So there's a couple of ways that, and it was really interesting, actually. I just had this conversation with an accelerator client yesterday. And there's a few ways that we talk about creating content, right? Because it's also my very firm belief that typically the reason why people don't create content, or they feel it takes forever, is because they don't have that clarity that they need in order to be able to pump out different content ideas. Because I would say that 80% of content creation, quote unquote, is brainstorming the content ideas. And then actually filming the content is pretty easy, because all you have to figure out is a schedule and a production plan that works for you, and just hold yourself accountable and stay consistent. That's really it. So I think for me, the biggest thing when it comes to brainstorming, the biggest thing for me when it comes to people saying that they don't have time to create content, really what they're saying is, it takes me forever to think about what I want to talk about or what my content idea is. Therefore, I don't have time for it, which means that ultimately I'm just not going to do it. And as a business owner, you guys have heard me say this before, the day that you start a business is the day that you become a problem solver. You become a solution seeker. My job, I always like to joke, my informal title as CEO is problem solver. That's literally it. That's all I do all day long. And obviously empower my team to be able to solve problems, but sometimes there are problems that they can't solve that I have to, right? You literally just have to become a problem solver. You have to completely eliminate any freaking excuse and come up with a solution, because that's just what it takes to run a business. Like, you have to do the thing. So anything that's holding you back from doing the thing, you need to figure out a way to overcome it. So with that being said, there are a couple of things that I take into account when it comes to figuring out what's going to work for me in terms of content creation. And I will also say that this has actually changed throughout the years. So like, for example, when I first started my business, it got to a point where I basically was, filming day of. I was filming all of my content day of. And because I had a little bit more time in the beginning of my business, right? And it was just also easier to do it that way. And I just did not have the mental capacity or the stamina or the patience to sit down and batch 15 videos in one sitting, right? That's a lot when you first learn to create content. So I would create day of, and then it got to the point where I had so many meetings on my calendar. This was probably a year and a half ago, that I was like, I don't have time. Like, my meetings would literally start at 8 a.m. and I wouldn't be done with work or meetings until 5 p.m. And after that, I'm like, well, and I would basically like shovel my lunch down my throat like 10 minutes before my next meeting would start, kind of thing, right? Like, it was just a crazy, crazy time. So I basically had to block out on Friday mornings 2 hours essentially to batch create content, because I just couldn't do it every single day. So that's what I did a couple years ago. And then now, honestly, I've kind of reverted back to what I was doing in the beginning of my business, because I got to a point, I've kind of shared this, like last year, I got to a point where I was actually getting really burnt out. Like, last year was our biggest year of growth, which was wonderful, and I would never take it back, but it required a lot of me. And I've shared this before on the podcast. It required so much for me to really get to where I wanted to go. We created like a multi-million-dollar year last year, which was incredible, but I worked 14-hour days. And so this year, my word was balance, because I wanted to be able to hit those goals and either match or exceed what we made. Excuse me. However, I wanted to do it in a way that was sustainable, that wouldn't take a toll on my mental health. And so this year, now I've completely like changed up my schedule. I've changed up how we do things with clients. We've brought on more team to support clients, things like that. And so for me, I have a little bit more time in my days. Like, I completely shifted my schedule so that I don't have any meetings start until 10 a.m. every single day. So from 9 to 10 a.m., I do all my content creation and I just get it out of the way. So I actually film my TikToks in the moment day of. The only downside to that I will say, because obviously, like I mentioned, there's pros and cons to everything. The only downside to that is like if I get sick or if something happens and I'm not able to record in that moment, one of two things happens. Either it just doesn't go out, or it gets to the point where like I post it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when I have like my lunch break. And sometimes it doesn't perform as well, because our audience analytics indicate that people are most active, at least in my audience, usually before like 11 a.m., I would say. So that's the only downside to that. However, I always just kind of think forward. I'm like, okay, you know what? If I know that I'm going to be out of town, or I'm going to be super busy this like coming week, or any of those things, I'll try to just create content in advance. Sorry, I have an itch. So it's kind of just that level of like self-awareness, not only for yourself, but also for your calendar and your schedule and things like that, that I think is really important, so that you can really make sure that you're creating content the way that you need to, so that the content goes out, but it's manageable for your schedule. So like I said, there's a few things that I take into account. There's production plans. So there's 2 production plans that we typically recommend. We have our micro production plan and our macro production plan. For anyone who is not making 6 figures a month, meaning like you don't have a multi-million-dollar brand, my recommendation is always to utilize a micro production plan. So our micro production plan is creating a lot of little pieces of content. So that's actually what we're utilizing even still to this day. But we've kind of got a hybrid production plan going, because we're starting to incorporate more macro content, meaning more long form content. That's the podcast. Eventually we'll do vlogs and blogs and things like that, right? We have, long form YouTube videos. So the micro production plan is where you create a lot of little pieces of content. Macro production plan is where you create a few long form pieces of content that either you or your team chop up and strategically repurpose across all platforms. Because as we know, it's incredibly important in this day and age when it comes to marketing and the format of content. Short form content obviously does really well. So that's still something that you have to utilize, but it just kind of depends on how you want to go about creating content. Do I want to talk for a whole hour or 45 minutes and create like a small amount of long form content? But then either myself or my team, if you have one, are going to have to chop it up. So it's going to cost you extra time editing or money to pay people to edit. Or do I want to create more smaller pieces of content? So like I said, I started out with a micro production plan. I think the biggest thing for that is when it comes to selecting a production plan, the reason I say if you don't have a multi-million-dollar brand that I don't think you should be using a macro production plan, which by the way, that was something that we just implemented like last year, right? Is because the micro production plan allows you to pivot so much faster depending on what your audience is telling you. So if you don't know what converts your audience really well yet, that's going to be a really great opportunity for you to listen to your audience. And then that way you haven't batch created a shit ton of long form content that maybe ultimately your audience tells you they're disinterested in, right? So I will say that that's really, really helpful to be able to pivot and shift quickly. Because like even for our podcast, for example, this is technically our macro production plan because I'm creating a small amount of longer pieces of content. So every month right now, I'm filming 4 episodes. It used to be 8. We're working our way back up to that, but we're doing like a weekly episode, right? So when it comes to our podcast, I film way in advance. Like this episode that you're listening to right now, I'm filming this, it's October 1st. This probably won't go out until mid or end of November, right? So if I was somebody who did not know the topics, the messaging that my audience really wanted to hear, and I was filming that far in advance, and I was filming these like longer form pieces of content, that would work to my disadvantage because the second my audience tells me, oh, we don't like this, I don't have the opportunity to go back, or it's going to create a lot more work for me to go back and re-record all of those episodes and shift either the topic or the messaging or any of those things. So pick your production plan. I would always recommend, if you don't know what converts your audience, start with the micro production plan. And then once you figure that out, then you can shift the format of the content that you're putting out. And then the other thing that you also want to think through is how do you best film? How can you hold yourself accountable? So this is also based on your lifestyle, your schedule. I know we work with a lot of moms, weirdly enough, because I'm not a mom, obviously. But for a lot of my clients who are moms, or I even have team members who are moms, we've had this conversation around like, what would be easier, like batching or filming day of? And a lot of these moms, truthfully, have had conversations with me of like, oh girl, I don't have help when it comes to childcare right now. Like I don't do daycare. I don't have, a babysitter or a nanny or any of those things. And so the hard part about that is like, I don't have 2 hours uninterrupted to like sit down and film content. So they basically will tell me, they're like, I got up super early this morning. This is why I love working with moms, honestly, because they're like the biggest excuse eliminators ever. They're like, yeah, I got up before the kids were awake, filmed for 15 minutes. I got all of my videos done, pre-recorded my other content for Instagram or pre-created it or anything, sold on my stories. And it took me 30 minutes and it created a bunch of sales for me. They're just like, I have to use the time that I have to my advantage and be an excuse eliminator, right? So you have to take into account your personal schedule, your lifestyle. Do you have time to batch? Do you want to batch? I even know for me, like I said last year, like I was getting really burnt out when it came to content creation. And so I would get like 10 videos in and my brain would just be fried and I would have to create 15. And so I'm like, I feel like those last 5 just like sucked, and part of creating sales through your content is the energy that you bring. And so I think it's really important, obviously, for that to really be on par so that you can create really, really effortless sales. All right, so on to the next misconception, statement, whatever you guys want to call it. This is definitely something that's actually been a pretty big debate for us in the last few years, or not necessarily for us, but like with our audience, with other, marketing and sales experts, things like that. So true or false, curated Instagram feeds are out and have been since 2016. So if you guys were on Instagram or marketing your business from the years of like, I would say 2013 to 2016, you remember the days of like incredibly curated Instagram feeds, like influencers using the same presets on their feed or on all of their photos. And everyone was constantly thinking about like how the photo would fit into their grid. Like I have this memory of literally like picking filters or different photos, and I would like screenshot my grid, and I would go and I would look at how each different photo or each different filter looked when it came to my grid. So like it looked like so perfect and aesthetic when somebody landed on it. And I think back to that, I'm like, oh my God, that was so much work. We did the most in that phase. But now people are saying, oh, you should completely throw that out the window. People want more of that like authentic look to brands and businesses. So it doesn't actually matter what your grid looks like, what the visuals on your page look like. It actually more so matters like what you say than anything, right? So here's the thing that I will say is that to create a blanket statement like that, or to make a blanket statement like that, I feel like is reaching, right? Every piece of marketing or sales advice that you have really depends on your business. I think the biggest thing that I can ever impart to people is the skill and the ability to learn what your audience wants to hear from you and tune into that rather than tuning into what everyone else says that you should be doing. Because really, people are giving you marketing and sales advice based on their context, based on their knowledge and their experiences, whether it be theirs, all of their clients, things that they've heard from other marketing and sales experts. And so the hard part about that is, what if you're not included in that context, right? So let's say you are a luxury jewelry brand. Let's say you're a luxury fashion brand. Part of your brand is being aesthetically pleasing. And so if you have, unless for some reason your brand is like super messy, right? So the hard part about that is that if you have a feed that looks like really messy and you're trying to sell very aesthetically pleasing clothing or jewelry or luxury makeup or any of those things, when people land on your page, they need to sense that you are a luxury brand. And unfortunately, first impressions are a very real thing, which means if the visual, before they even read any of your messaging, if the visual of your feed, if the visual of your posts is anything but luxury, it's not going to give them the feeling that they need to get in order to buy from you. However, if you have, like, let's say for example, Alex Earl, if you have a personal brand that is revolving around the fact that you're a little bit of a mess, like her podcast is literally called Hot Mess with Alex Earl, right? She can be a little bit more authentic in her feed. She doesn't have to be super polished. Like, people want that authentic side to brands and businesses. So what I will say is that I think it is a blend of both. Like, if you look at our feed, for example, our visuals are very aesthetically pleasing, because we are a luxury marketing and sales brand. On top of that, if you look at our actual messaging or our reels or any of those things, the actual like B-roll content and the footage that we use for video content is a blend between our very polished brand photo shoots and more of just kind of my authentic behind the scenes of my life, more lifestyle content, right? So it is that blend of, it's giving you this perception and this indication that we are a luxury brand, but we are also approachable in that you can kind of see the behind the scenes of my life, our brand, what happens with our company, our team, things like that. So you still feel like there's that connection there, because if you go to both extremes, if you're incredibly polished and aesthetic and luxury, it feels very unapproachable, and you have to work a lot harder, I would say, to formulate a connection with your audience, which we've talked about consistently how important that is in marketing and sales these days. So I think if you go to one extreme, you're doing yourself a disservice. If you go to the other extreme, if it's not aligned with your brand, then you're going to constantly be fighting against financial objections. People aren't going to purchase from you. They're going to purchase from a competitor of yours that has a lower price point, etc., right? So I think that instead of making a blanket statement that everybody needs to throw out the curated feeds and have it just be this like authentic, behind the scenes, casual feed is false. But I also think to make a blanket statement that everyone needs to have curated feeds is also false. It depends on your brand, it depends on your audience, and it depends on the message you want to portray. The other thing I also want to mention about this is that the point of your feed content is for it to be bingeable. The point of your feed content is for it to convert your audience into an actual sale. And so because of that, the other thing you have to think about is this bingeable? And like I said, for both extremes, probably not. If you look at even our content, like I said, our feed content, it's very luxury in just the visuals of it when you just land on our page. It's also very clickable. So we always have like text on screen of, what our posts are about, so that if somebody's binging my content, looking at my feed, they're like, oh, educational content is dead. Interesting. I want to look about that. Oh, this person created this much money because they worked with Savannah. Interesting. I want to read about that. Or, this was this, one strategy shift that this person made so that they created this really great result. I want to read about that. It's very bingeable. It's very clickable. It makes it so that the second our audience lands on our page, they're really kind of drawn into our world, and it makes them want to consume more. So that's the other thing that you really want to think through is with my brand, with the way I'm presenting my feed content right now, with our visuals, are we creating an environment where our audience wants to binge our content? And if the answer is yes, great. If the answer is no, your audience isn't doing that, maybe that's something that we need to look at in our visuals. Okay, now we are going to move on to the next myth. True or false, more content is always better than less content. So this is actually a very interesting take. I've seen a lot of brands with like the simple goal of creating more and more content, because the thought process is essentially like, oh, well, if one post creates this many sales for us, then obviously 3 posts per day is better. Even if it's at the cost of like the quality of their content. So here's my take on this, you guys. I don't think it's one or the other. I don't think it's quality, and I don't think it's quantity. I think it's honestly both. You have to have the right quality, and you have to have the right quantity. So for example, something that I always tell our clients, I'll have people basically be like, so I know you've said I only need to do like 3 videos a day on TikTok, but I can't do 3 videos a day. So what would you say if I told you I wanted to do 1 video a day? And I was like, that's fine. You can do 1 video a day, but you have to recognize it's going to take you longer to grow. So you can pick the process, or you can pick the result. You don't get to pick both. You can't pick the process and the result, unfortunately. And that's what I've always said about everything. It's like you either say, this is the result that I want, and submit to the process and surrender to the process, or you say, I don't like that process, so I'm going to make my own process, and I'm okay with the result being different or taking longer. So same goes for creating content. In my opinion, and I've literally tested every single like number of content specifically on TikTok, Instagram, all these different things. What I have found to be the magic number is 3 videos a day on TikTok, 1 feed post a day on Instagram, and selling on your stories on Instagram. Bare fucking minimum, you guys. Bare minimum. So if you say, I don't want to do that amount because maybe you can't create that much quality of content with that much quantity, that's okay. But you also have to recognize that it's going to take you a little bit longer to grow your audience, to get your audience to engage, to ultimately see sales. Because the other thing I will also tell you, and you guys have heard me say this before, is that it literally takes your audience 8 to 12 times of hearing about your offer, your product or service before they even consider purchasing or investing, reaching out, inquiring, going to your website. So if you're posting 1 video a day or 1 video every other day, think about how long it's going to take them to even consistently hear that message enough where they're like, interesting, like I should inquire, or I should look more into this product. Versus if you were doing 3 videos a day that all had that same message, you within a couple of days could potentially convert a follower into a client. That's exactly what happens with our clients. In fact, I literally just had a conversation with somebody today, an accelerator client of ours. I was on the call earlier, and she was like, yeah, it was so cool. Like the other day, I literally had somebody like look at my content, binge my content, inquire, and within like an hour, she had signed. Like that, no big deal. It was the easiest sale ever, blah, blah, blah. And that's the power of your content. That's the power of being able to, number one, get somebody's attention with your brand, with your content, get them to binge your content, and also say the right things to ultimately get them to inquire and convert. But she's consistently been putting 1 piece of content out on her Instagram feed every single day. And so that person binged all of that content and then ultimately ended up inquiring and buying very quickly. If she hadn't been that consistent, that would be something where that person would have followed her. They would have been consuming her content, but it probably would have taken them a few weeks to reach out, maybe even a few months. You never know, right? So in my opinion, it's incredibly important to have the right quantity of content. However, the other thing that I have also seen on the flip side is that, like, for example, a couple years ago, I was like, I want to test a theory. It was actually this theory. I was like, if I can create this much money with 3 videos a day, what could I create with 6 videos a day? Would it double my sales? Or does it really matter? So I actually, for 60 days, I believe, I did 6 videos a day for 60 days. And what I will tell you is that my quality of like the last few videos a day that I did decreased significantly, because what I recognized is that I could not pump out that much content every day and really have it be like good quality content based on the production plan we were using. We were only doing micro production plans. Now we have 4 videos a day going out on TikTok because it's 1 podcast clip, 2 videos a day that I film that are just like regular face to camera TikTok videos, and then a trend. So obviously we have 4 videos a day going out, but I've heard people talking about the fact that, you know, the only way to scale is to create more content. In fact, this is one area that I actually disagree with like Alex and Layla Hermosi on, is they're talking about how in order to scale your business to a certain level, because they typically work with people who are looking to make like a few million a year, 10 million a year, things like that. Their belief is that you have to create more content. They're like, you know, the top competitors, you know, who are making the kind of money that you want to be making right now, they have like 10 videos a day going out on YouTube. I don't care, because the likelihood of that actually being quality content is so low, right? The thing that I will always say to clients is pick the amount of content that you think you can stay consistent with when you are starting, and stick with it. Be consistent, and then bump it up a notch, and then bump it up a notch. It's like when you're working out. When I used to lift really heavy weights years and years and years ago, I was like 18. I actually injured my back really, really bad because I was deadlifting a weight that I should not have been deadlifting. And I remember telling my trainer, I was like, if you add more weight, I am not going to be able to keep good form, which means I'm going to hurt myself. And he was like, no, you can handle it, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what happened? I hurt myself because I didn't work up to it. And now it's actually so interesting because I shared that with my trainer that I hired a couple months ago. And so we worked up to even like the smallest amount. Like yesterday, it was really cool. I was so excited. Even though it doesn't sound like that much, I ended up doing like the squat bar with, I think it added up to 85 pounds, 75 pounds, something like that. And for a lot of people, that might not seem like a lot, but for me, that is a lot. And it's really empowering to feel like I can do that and have good form and have good stamina and be able to do all the reps and not struggle, because initially we worked on my core, we worked on my back muscles, we worked on all of the supporting muscles that don't make you look good, but that enable you to do harder workouts that ultimately make you look the way that you want to look or feel the way that you want to feel. If I had just jumped right into squatting 75, 85 pounds, I would have hurt myself again because my body wasn't ready for that. I didn't work up to it. I didn't train myself. And the same goes for creating content. If you just jump into 3 videos a day, there are some people who can do that. I did that in the very beginning. I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. But there are some people who jump into that and end up burning themselves out very, very quickly because it gets to the point where you have not trained yourself to have that kind of stamina. And so you can't keep it up consistently, and then you end up ghosting your audience. So I always say, when you're starting out, pick the amount of content you can consistently create well, and do that for 30, 60, 90 days, and then increase the amount, and then increase the amount. The gold standard, like I said, is 3 videos a day on TikTok, 1 trend, 2 educational, and then one feed content or feed post on Instagram and selling on your stories every day. That's the gold standard when it comes to like bare minimum of what you should be doing in your marketing. So again, if you can't do one feed post a day on Instagram, do one every other day. If you can't do 3 videos a day on TikTok, do 1 or do 2. So I always say, like, if you can only do 1 per day, do 1 trend one day, educational the next, trend, educational, trend, educational. If you can do 2 per day, do 1 trend, 1 educational, right? And then add on the other educational eventually. There's so many ways that you can work up to it, but I think consistency is not the thing that you want to play with when it comes to organic marketing. You have to pick what you're going to do and do it well and do it consistently. And the only other thing that I will also say about this is if you are creating a lot of content and you don't actually have a marketing strategy, my main concern about that is you losing trust with your audience. It's really interesting. I've had more people than you can guess come to us and ultimately end up working with us who basically say, I have hip hopped around so much when it comes to my content, when it comes to my marketing, that I don't understand, why I'm not seeing sales. And when I look at their content, I'm like, because there's no consistent messaging here. You've lost trust with your audience because they can recognize that you're a little bit of a hot mess when they consume your content. And like I said, you literally get one chance to prove to somebody when they land on your page that they should stick around and consume your content. And if you're all over the place, or if you haven't posted in a couple of weeks, they're not gonna listen to you. They're not gonna come back and consume your content. Why should they? They owe you nothing. Literally, your audience or people in general, your consumers owe you nothing. You have to earn their engagement. You have to earn their attention. You have to earn their sales, which is why it pisses me off when people are literally like, why am I not seeing sales? Why is no one buying from me? I don't know. Did you earn the sales? I don't know. Did you show up the way that you need to in order for people to trust you enough to buy from you? Why are you just expecting that people are going to hand you their money? Like, you're not doing the thing that's going to make them want to hand you their money. So why are you expecting them to? All right. Another statement, true or false, going viral is always a good thing. So it's really interesting because along with the brands that just want to create more content, usually the reason behind wanting to create more content is with this goal of like, if I could just go viral, I would get more sales. And so their goal a lot of times is virality because they can get in front of more people, which means ultimately more people might buy. That's actually not true, you guys. This is like literally the most false thing that I've ever heard in my entire freaking life. So let's talk about the drawbacks of going viral. I'm going to talk to you about the good things about going viral. I'm going to talk to you about how to get in front of the right eyes. We're going to talk about all the things of like how to do it right and how to do it well. But here's the thing when it comes to going viral. Unless you are incredibly strategic in the content you are posting that is designed to go viral, there is a massive capability for you to go viral and bring in the exact opposite target audience of the one that you initially wanted to attract in. So I've used this example before. I actually had a client who came to me and she was like, okay, so I need help. I posted a video of my dog. She was a service-based business. And she goes, it went insanely viral. And she goes, now all I have is dog people in my audience. So all of my other videos, she was in marketing. She's like, all of my other marketing videos tanked. Nobody wants to engage with them. Views are shit. And I don't really know what to do at this point because I've drawn in the wrong audience and I don't know how to get out of that. So if you are just posting to go viral, you have the capability to actually create more harm than good for your platform, for your audience, for your marketing. And so I think the most important part about going viral is doing it very strategically and intentionally so that you get in front of the right eyes. And not only do you go viral, but it actually creates sales for you. So like if you went viral for that dog video, do you think that's going to create more sales for you? No, of course not. Of course it's not going to create more sales for you because it's all about entertainment. The goal of our viral content when we do this for ourselves or for our audience is to grab their attention, is to funnel them into our actual community, and then ultimately to get them binging our content and then convert into an actual customer or a client. And so for that reason, you can't just post random ass content that you're hoping goes viral because it's not going to actually do the things that you're looking for it to do. Just because you get in front of more eyes does not mean they're going to buy from you. I talk all the time about, because I know the girlies love Taylor Swift. I'm a big Taylor Swift fan myself. If you went to the Eras tour and she was not so in tune with her audience that she knew for like her secret songs what everyone wanted to hear, what people were requesting, and she just randomly picked different songs that either no one knew or no one liked, or it wasn't what people were craving, it would be a very different experience, and I don't think it would have been as successful. I think a huge reason why she is so successful is because she's so in tune with her audience. You can absolutely have the biggest stage with the biggest crowd and talk about, say the wrong thing, sing the wrong song, and have it be a negative experience versus a really positive one. So again, same thing goes for going viral. If you're somebody who posts a random video that's just designed to go viral and it's not what your audience wants to see or hear, they're not going to respond the way that you're looking for them to, and it's definitely not going to create sales. You can't just go viral. You have to go viral with the right messaging. And the other thing I also want to point out is that sometimes going viral, we call it like mini viral. You can go mini viral and viral, and it can create so many more sales for you. The goal is, like I said, every single day you should be posting one trend or one piece of like attraction content on TikTok. The goal of that piece of content is to perform well, whether it's 5K, 10K, 50, 500, 5 million views, doesn't matter. The goal is visibility and then ultimately conversion. And so if for some reason your content isn't performing as well, quote unquote, as other people's, it's not hitting like the millions of views, which by the way, I probably have only ever had 2 videos in the 3 years that I have consistently been on TikTok go past 1 million, and they're at like 1 million and 1.1 million views. But we've created multiple millions of dollars in sales because of all of our other content. So let it be known, you don't have to go massively viral to create a shit ton of sales. And in fact, our content that typically, quote unquote, performs the worst is usually what brings in the sales. All right, 2 more myths that we are going to bust. So on to the next one. This one is actually probably one of my least favorite marketing trends. True or false? Objection handling, speaking to your buyer types in your content is quote unquote bro marketing. And all you have to do in order to create sales is just show up and be yourself. I wish you guys who are just listening to this podcast could see my face. If you're watching on YouTube, you know I don't enjoy this statement. This is probably the most false thing that I've ever heard. It was wild because the other day I saw someone's post and she was like, she goes, controversial opinion, the people who spoke out against bro marketers have become bro marketers themselves. And I'm like, oh, so we're just like rage baiting people now. Cool. Okay, amazing. So here's what I will say, you guys. Just because you are incorporating sales psychology into your content and not just going with the flow does not make you a bro marketer. Let me repeat that. It does not make you a bro marketer. So I want to give context to, in my opinion, what bro marketing looks like. Because I think we've lost the plot a little bit here, truthfully. There's a lot of discussion, I would say, like in the marketing space about how consumers are shifting their buying habits and that people are really tired of being sold to. And I agree that that's very true, which means if you're going to market and sell to your audience, you have to make it feel like you're not marketing and selling to them, right? That's a story for another day. And while that's true, the solution is not, in my opinion, to just abandon all marketing efforts. It doesn't mean you just post whenever you feel like it. It doesn't mean you post when you're inspired. It doesn't mean you talk about what you want to talk about. It doesn't mean that you don't listen to your audience. It doesn't mean you don't take into account how they buy. It doesn't mean you don't look at your data. It doesn't mean blah, 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 blah. What it means is that you have to be so in tune with your audience and understand how they buy that you give that to them on a silver platter in your content. I think that people claim that using buyer types or objection handling in their content is bro marketing, or it's giving like used car salesman. But in reality, it's really just using your data and using what your audience has told you back to them to build trust faster and ultimately get them to buy. I think that the like bro marketing is aggressive, it's abrasive, it's in your face. It doesn't take into account how the other person is feeling. In fact, I think it's the epitome of like what not to do, right? It's literally, I always say marketing is a conversation. It's not a monologue. And so for me, I think that bro marketing is a monologue, which we're not even going to get into the fact that like men just enjoy hearing themselves talk, which is why we're going to call it bro marketing. But you know, again, story for another day. I genuinely think that when it comes to bro marketing, all it is basically you just talking about what you want to talk about. So I would actually venture to say, and this might piss some of you guys off, is if all you're doing is posting when you feel inspired and talking about what you want to talk about, that to me is actually bro marketing. Like that is bro marketing. It's not giving a shit about what your audience feels or thinks, not really caring how they buy, and you're not making your marketing or your sales about them, which truth be told is why all of these people who say, oh, don't be a bro marketer, and they're just posting whenever they want, talking about themselves, talking about their story, their results, that's why they can't scale past a certain amount. Like there are so many people who are like, oh, I'm making 20K months, but like, don't be a bro marketer. I'm like, yeah, well, there's also a reason why you're stuck at 20K months. Like, let's just be fucking real right now. Like if we're gonna name names, let's put all of our cards on the table right now. Like there is a very, very clear reason why you cannot scale. And it's because you don't have a strategy. You're not looking at your data and you don't give a shit about what your audience says to you. You guys asked for spicy Savannah. I'm going to fucking bring it. So you listening to your audience and talking back to them rather than just monologuing, like I said, it creates this, this experience and this culture of empowerment for your audience, in my opinion. I talked about this yesterday on my live on Instagram. If you guys have not read this book called The Catalyst, it's a great, great book. It's a sales book, and it's all about sales psychology. And it talks about, one of the chapters is all about agency and giving your audience agency to make decisions on their own, which is ultimately going to cause them to buy from you faster and easier. Because at the end of the day, everybody makes purchase decisions. Everyone makes decisions because they feel like it's their decision and they want to make it, right? It's so funny because my running joke with our family is that none of the women in our family ever want to listen to somebody's advice. They just want to learn the lesson on their own. And it's the exact same thing. There have been so many times where my family's been like, wouldn't make that decision, wouldn't date that person, wouldn't do that if I was you. And I was like, yeah, screw you guys. Like, I'm going to do what I want. And I end up making the same decision that they recommended. Did it take me a longer time to make it? Did it take me more hurt that I experienced because I had to learn the lesson on my own? Absolutely. But I needed to make that decision on my own in order for me to feel empowered to do it. And the same goes for your audience. And so there are very specific ways when it comes to sales psychology that you can empower your audience to make a purchase or an investment decision or any of those things on their own, or make it feel like it's their decision and their choice. And part of that is knowing their buyer types. Part of that is knowing what they're struggling with, what they want, how your product or service fits into that, how they buy, what their objections are, what their concerns are, and putting all of that into your content so that it sells to them based on what's important to them. And ultimately they make that buying decision because they feel like it's their idea, even though you kind of like planted that seed for them. That's really all that marketing is just planting seeds. And then the last thing that I'll say about this is, quote unquote, just showing up. This fucking gets my goat. Like, just show up. Okay, and do what? And show up and do what? What do I talk about? What do I do? This is one of my biggest fucking pet peeves when it comes to anybody who is marketing and sales expert, business scaling expert. I don't care what you want to fucking call yourself. Anyone who gives you advice on how to market or sell or scale your business. The amount of clients that I have worked with, and it's really sad, but I honestly always say, like, we are the people that typically our clients come to after they made a bad investment, and we have to clean up the mess and give them real fucking advice. Honestly, there are so many people who will say, pay me an arm and a leg and your firstborn child, and I'm going to show up and tell you to just keep showing up and tell your story and connect with your audience, but give you no real tactical advice on how to do that. Just showing up, just sharing your story, just connecting with your audience is not the thing that's going to make them buy from you. It is not. I'm sorry. I don't care. If you have emotional buyers, sure, that's going to help. Absolutely. Because they're going to trust you more, blah, blah, blah. That's not the thing that's going to make them buy from you. I actually said this to my accelerator clients last week. I basically said, what gets your audience obsessed with you, what gets them binging your content, what gets them to be brand piranhas is about you, your brand, your thoughts, your process, your solutions, how you do things uniquely. That's what gets them binging your content, obsessed with you, coming back to consume your content. What gets them to buy is about them, their problems, their desires, how your product or service solves those things, how they buy, their buyer types, their objections, their concerns, you handling all of those things in your content. That's what gets them to buy, not your story. I'm sorry, but you're not that cool. No one is that cool. No one is that cool. You could look at somebody like freaking Gary Vee and be like, I'm not going to invest in him because of his underdog story. I'm going to invest in him because of, what he says he can do for me, or, how he says he can help me. It's about you. It's about the buyer, not you. It's about the buyer. It's about what you can do for them with your product or your service. That's what's going to make them buy. So please don't just show up and tell your story. Please don't just show up and connect with your audience. Please stop falling for the trap that these people are setting for you by telling you that's all you need to do to create sales, because that's bullshit. I'm sorry. That is a marketing tactic that they are using to basically seduce you and get you to work with them. Because I have worked with some of those people. I've literally, guys, I wish I could fucking drop names. I wish I could spill the tea. I can't. But I have worked with people who are massive in the online space, and they have come to me because they're like, my sales are dipping, they're inconsistent, any of those things, and they are the go with the flow people. And it's because they don't have a strategy and they just quote unquote show up. And I will give them a strategy, and then they will actually start to see sales. But the messaging continues of all you have to do is just show up, because that's not even what they're doing. So don't take that advice. And the last thing that I will say is that showing up is not a replacement for an actual strategy and having effective messaging. It's just not. It's a complementary part of marketing. Yes, you have to continue to show up. Yes, your story is important, your brand story, your personal story, whatever it is. Connecting with your audience is important. Creating a relationship with your audience is important. But knowing what converts them into an actual sale is more important. So those are the main 5 myths that I wanted to debunk, but I wanted to do a few more rapid fire ones and just give you guys my thoughts quick and dirty, super fast before we wrap this up. So true or false, every business will need paid ads at some point. False. Depends on your results that you want. If you're okay with just scaling to multiple 7 figures, you can do that with all organic content. If you want to scale to 8, 9, 10, build a freaking beast of a business, yes, you'll probably need paid ads at some point. But your organic marketing is still probably going to make up 80% of your results. True or false, you have to invest in a fancy funnel to make real sales. False. Abso-fucking-lutely false. You have to invest in an organic marketing funnel. In my opinion, you do not need a fancy automated funnel, any of those things for sales. I think that you need to invest in marketing and sales psychology knowledge and implementation knowledge, and that's all you need. Really, truly, because that will translate across all industries, platforms, business models, you name it. It is going to be probably the most crucial lesson that you will learn as a business owner. True or false, consistency guarantees success. False. You can be consistent at something and not be doing it well. You can be consistent at something and not be doing it well. If I went to the gym and I did shitty squats for 30 days and was like, why don't I have a really great butt? What do you expect? You're not doing it well. Doesn't matter if you're doing it and checking a box, you're not doing it well. There are so many women who just go to the gym and they go on the freaking Stairmaster and they're like, I don't understand why I don't look the way that I want to look. Because you're not doing the thing that you need to do in order to look the way that you want to look. When it comes to your marketing and your sales, you're not actually doing the thing well that you need to do in order to create results. I don't care that you're showing up every single day. Are you being intentional? Are you being strategic? Are you talking about things that your audience actually cares about? Are you actually selling to your audience? There's so many things I could talk about, but no, consistency does not guarantee success. True or false, faceless marketing is the future of social media marketing. Bro, please, for the love of God, get this trend out of my face. Pun intended, clearly. Faceless marketing is not the future of digital marketing. Connection, relationships, that is the future of digital marketing, and faceless marketing is literally the opposite of that. True or false, you need a big following to make sales? Absolutely false. I could not scream it from the mountaintop louder. I have clients who literally have 2,000 followers on Instagram and are making 50K plus months because they have the right strategy. Does your audience need to consistently be growing in order to keep creating more sales? Absolutely, because you can't beat a dead horse and sell to the same audience over and over and over again and expect them to buy. You cannot be stagnant and expect to grow at the same time. It doesn't work like that, but you do not initially need a big following to make sales. I literally had an audience probably of 3,000 Instagram followers and was making multiple six figures a year. So do it that way you will. All right, so hopefully that was a really fun episode for you guys, just to kind of hear my thoughts. Like I said, definitely brought some spicy Savannah for you guys, but anytime somebody wants to like assert their beliefs on me, you better watch out. So if you guys have any questions about any of these myths, or if you just have questions about marketing and sales in general, I've really actually been loving doing like true and false or like Q&A different things and just kind of giving you guys my opinions on all of your different questions. So make sure that you either send them to me on Instagram, or like I said, we're doing like an Ask Me Anything on Tuesdays every single week, where I'm giving free advice on marketing and sales. We do lives every Monday. So make sure you come on over to Instagram. If you have not already followed me there, you probably have, or maybe you're from TikTok. But we give a ton more like just free advice and strategic advice and stuff over on Instagram. So if you have questions, pop them over there. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys.